It's the real word. It's the real word. It's the real word. It's the real word.
We on a mission and that's bringing y'all the truth. You know the problem, but we get into the root. The devil watching, yeah, he always on pursuit. But Jesus is our rock, so we shall not be moved. We on a winning team, so we can't lose. We say facts, cause we hitting y'all with proof. Started from the bottom, now we standing on the roof. As God as our witness, we gon' make it to the moon. When you want the truth, the world be hiding it. This the real word, we providing it. We got Ace, BK, Truth, Rick Star, and we plan to make a movie like it's Pixar. We came a long way from the plantation. We just tryna save your souls from damnation. So if you down with the message, tune in every week. It will lead you to the message that you seek.
It's the real word. It's the real word. It's the real word. It's the real word.
Welcome to the Real Word Season 8, Episode 3. Shout out to everybody who's been watching. Shout out to everybody who's been supporting. Shout out to everybody that has helped us to get this far so far. Again, that's Season 8. Who would have thought that we would have gotten so far? Remember, we started back in 2018. RIP to Kobe. So, I'm your host, Ricard Gina. Well, I'm here with my co-host. Introduce yourself.
You already know it's the one and only AI in the building. I'm your Instagram. Ace Irving 11. You know if you ain't know 11, they ain't me, man.
And it's a special day for him. It's his birthday. Happy birthday.
Hey, celebration. Happy birthday.
Hey.
How old are you now? No.
I was born like Kobe, but you know, he's 25 now.
Okay.
Alright. And I'm here with...
things for 25.
Facts.
That's what's up, man.
And we're also here with my other co-host. Introduce yourself, gentlemen.
Hey, it's Kimmel Hall. You know, I don't got BK Truth no more. I had a phone issue, but actually, I got a song out right now. I want to dance with you.
Oh, where?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna play
some
that.
Afro soca, you know.
No features, nothing.
No features, man.
Oh, straight single.
This is personal.
Okay. And we have a special guest for you guys. You see him up on the screen, all the way from Cali. Introduce yourself.
Hey.
Ricard, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Robert Yoho. I'm a retired physician, and I'm going to tell you about healthcare corruption today.
Okay. We're going to get a little bit spicy. So,
I got questions, man.
Let's keep it calm, fellas.
Okay, so let's dive more deep into your history. You said you're a retired physician. Tell us about what school you went to, your medical background, and what you practiced and for how long.
Okay. So we could go back all the way to Boy Scouts where I was an Eagle Scout, but I don't think it's all that relevant. What I've done the last 4 years since I retired was develop my ideas about how corrupt medicine is. And I studied, and what originally, I was actually a cosmetic surgeon. I did some training in internal medicine and also in dermatology. But I ended up my career, the last 35 years of my career as a cosmetic surgeon. So
plastic surgery.
You know what the TNA business is, right?
No.
Explain.
Okay, well, I'm going to let your listeners sort of figure that out on their own because this is a GP podcast, right? Mm-hmm. TNA business, that's what I was in. One of them.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I was
KFC.
The TNA.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but my story is that I am Rip Van Winkle. I was asleep for my whole career,
He's the
my
real
whole life
Brian.
until 5 years ago. And 5 years
I was
ago,
just about to say.
5 years ago, I woke up to what was going on,
way.
and the landscape had changed utterly. I mean, it was just a mess. There was all these payoffs by these huge medical corporations. The doctors were sort of all bought off. The standards were bought off. And I couldn't believe what they were doing to people. I mean, they had 20% of the whole country on psychiatric medications. Probably 50 to 70% of the country, by various estimates, were on prescription drugs, and that's absurd on the face of it. Our health had deteriorated. We're spending 20% of our gross domestic product, which is twice per person, what other countries spend. Twice what Canada, England, Australia, and so on spend on healthcare. And Singapore gets by with 4.5% of their gross domestic product. We spend 20. It's incredible. And we have a horrible product. We're like number 40th or 50th in the length of time we live. And we have all kinds of chronic diseases. We have obesity. We have all these autoimmune diseases. It's terrible. And so I got into this thing and step by step kind of started to see the matrix. And I mean, it's a sad story. And what I did was I finally, after 3 years of working on it, because, you know, the hardest thing in life, Ricard, is to change your own mind, right? Mm-hmm. The second hardest thing is probably to change somebody else's mind, but I had to change my own mind about what I'd done my whole career. And I published this book called Butchered by Healthcare, and you can see there's a guy with a white coat with his head cut off there and a pile of gold in front of him, and that's what healthcare is today.
Wait,
I mean,
doctor, let's stop there, right? Because that's very ironic. Yeah, botched by healthcare and used to be...
Butchered.
Yeah, butchered by healthcare. Well, butchered. And
yeah, same thing.
Ironically enough, you used to be a plastic surgeon, and that's what you used to do.
Well, plastic surgery is sort of outside, or cosmetic surgery is sort of outside the usual income stream, or at least part of it is. The kind that I didn't take any insurance payments, but the real money in healthcare is
so you took cash payments.
Get paid by insurance companies. I was a cash practice, you know, and I got paid reasonably well, but it was very difficult. I mean, there was a lot of problems. And Ricard, if you had to guess about my problems, it all boiled down to one thing.
What's that?
And I'm going to tell you what it is. I want you to try to guess what it was.
Money?
Women. It was all women. I didn't say that. Out of this podcast.
Don't let your wife hear that.
No. She knows that she worked in my practice with me, and she was sort of my woman wrangler. She was able to communicate with them, which, I mean, I don't know whether you communicate with women, but I have a hard time. So she was able to communicate with them and convince them of what was reasonable and what wasn't reasonable, and that's not an easy job.
For BBL, right?
Sure. BBL. Have you ever done BBL surgery before?
EBO.
No, BBL.
BBL surgery.
Bravo.
Yeah, that's what I did. That was my main thing. Is you suck
see that? Ladies, we got the doctor for
you.
Say that again.
Suck the fat out of the front and put it in the back.
Doctor,
you know,
Cali in the building.
It's an arms race out there. You know what the nuclear arms race, Russia and the United States tried to get more and more nuclear bombs and all that. Well, the women try to get bigger and bigger parts of their body, right? Either the back side or the front side. And so some of them get so crazy about it, and the surgeons get so crazy about it, it becomes a WTF factor instead of that looks nice factor.
Oh, yeah. So, doctor, let me ask you a question. Why are these women getting such enhancements? Like, what's the return on that investment?
Yeah.
Well, the return on the investment is somebody will marry them and have their kids with them and work together the rest of their lives. It makes their whole thing, you know.
So they're trying to get money.
Who's nice-looking woman is very very powerful. They're credible. You believe what they say. I mean, it's a great thing for them.
So the body is the investment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's everything for some of them.
So it's for money then? For money.
Well, let's not get that cynical. Maybe it was for love.
But it
was for love.
What would you say for the ones that get in the bad environment, though?
I'm sorry, repeat?
What would you say for the ones that get in the bad environment? Because we all know if you're in the wrong environment, that's a bad investment, right?
That's accurate. Yeah, if you're in the wrong environment, you're in trouble. Who's this guy on the right? I'm starting to see your friend over here with the T-shirt, the white T-shirt.
Oh, me, I'm Acee.
Yeah.
He's
Acee. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, there's a couple people in the studio.
Yeah.
It's
Acee. Very cool.
Come on, yeah.
I have a question for you, doctor. How do we deal with prostate cancer? Because this is...
Okay.
Yeah.
Prostate cancer is generally... the problems are overestimated because when you're 70% of us get prostate cancer. It's more common in black people, right? Mm-hmm. But 70% of us get prostate cancer by the time we're 70. However, only 2% of us die from prostate cancer.
Really?
So the urologists have all these things they do, which are an overreaction to the size of the problem. What they do is they've got this habit of sticking their finger up your backside. It hasn't been a very successful thing, because what happens is, if they feel any lumps there, then they go on and they stick a large needle up your backside and take a piece of your little bite of your prostate, and then they send it off for analysis. And they claim that the prostate-specific antigen test, which is a blood test, is a good indication. If it goes up a little bit, then that's a good indication to stick their finger up your backside and do the biopsy. Well, the problem is they don't have good treatments for prostate cancer, right? They do this thing called a radical prostatectomy, and that operation, the way it's used currently is a failure, because they apply it sort of indiscriminately. I suppose there are a few people that might be reasonable for it, but the problem with that operation is you lose your ability to hold your urine in about a quarter of the cases, or 20% of the cases, and you're impotent. You can't get an erection in about 20% of the cases. So this thing, what's worse, it makes your penis shorter.
The ultimate.
You guys have some extra length on there, but I can't afford
the ultimate.
Ricardo, am I allowed to make jokes like that on your podcast?
Yeah. Check out, sir.
So
You're going too far.
Was that too far?
Yeah. It's all right,
these guys, to get back
Yeah.
they have this treatment for metastatic or spread prostate cancer, which is another disaster, called Lupron, and that is a testosterone blocker. So what happens, you guys, if I blocked all your testosterone, how do you feel?
We won't be men.
Your lifespan.
We won't be men.
Yeah, we won't be men.
It makes you feel terrible, and you live long. You live shorter period. So you need your testosterone. They block the testosterone, and they don't die as much from prostate cancer, but they die of other things. And we've got this guy, Otis Brawley, you may have heard of him. He is the last head of the American Cancer Society. He is a brilliant black commentator about medicine, and he wrote a book. Let me see if I remember the name of it. It's anyway. So he wrote a book, and he thought that we're using far too much Lupron, and that probably if we didn't use all that testosterone blockade, the people would die more of prostate cancer, but on average they live longer. You get it? So prostate cancer is a real conundrum, and if you or your loved ones have prostate cancer, I would recommend picking up. You can get this. Look, laugh at me all you will, Ricardo. I'm not a money-making machine. I break even on all my.
You're not a money-making machine?
No.
You sure?
No.
Dr. Miami.
I'm trying to help out.
Dr. Cali.
Okay, wait.
This thing is $3 on Kindle. Okay, my other book is $3 on Kindle.
Okay.
They're cheap.
Two books.
So if you have prostate cancer or somebody, read Butchered by Healthcare first. Read the section that has to do with urologists and prostate cancer, and start looking. And I've got 500 references in there. Look deeply into it before you make any. There's no freaking emergency on any of this stuff.
I hear. Because my father and also my wife's father, they both had their natural herbs. My wife's father, he lived for 14 more years after finding out he had prostate cancer off natural herbs. None of the chemo and so on. My father, he's still going on 20 years so far with it.
Yeah. We almost all get prostate cancer. You guys are going to get prostate cancer, but if you leave it
Not going to wood.
Come on now. I'm not trying to wish that upon
you. Dudes. When you're 70, I'm 68 now. I'm sure I got prostate cancer, but I'm not letting anybody stick a finger up there or do anything else.
That's your pride.
Keep that pride, brother.
And you don't know until they tell you anyways, until you're diagnosed. The same thing with psychology.
What they do is they draw this blood test, which is not very good, and they use that as an excuse to stick the finger up there and then biopsy. And for the most part, this is a futile effort. It's not a good thing. It basically causes more trouble than it helps.
Okay, that's good to know. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So it's more benefits.
But yeah, earlier, Dr. Yoho, you said something about you're not a money maker, and I said that's not true because you used to do cosmetic surgery, and from doing that, they would become money makers off the work that you made on them. Or the work that you did on them.
Yes.
And you made money off them too.
The women are money making on the work I did on them.
Yeah.
That would be true.
But you make money too.
You had a very big impact
I don't
on
think I did many hookers, Ricardo. Wasn't in there.
You never know. Especially you had a cash business.
Everybody's selling something.
So it's like you got straight profit.
Yeah.
You didn't have to deal with no taxes.
I mean,
So yeah, I mean, I had a great career, but I've been retired for 3 to 4 years, and so I mean, I made enough. I didn't get rich. I made enough, so with my social and all that, I
retired early.
You know, and my wife and I live. You know, we're not jet setters by any means. You know?
yeah.
You live very comfortable.
Yeah, we're comfortable. But I'm doing something that's important, and I'm trying to educate
the
people
masses
about medical corruption, and more specifically, I'm interested in educating them about what we're going to call the fungus, right? The fungus among us.
So what if they come after you though? Like they come to take you out?
Well, Ricard, if people in my age group can't stand up and tell the truth, who can?
True.
What do I have to lose?
True.
If they knock me off, I've lost 10 years of my life. You know, and I basically, I don't think there's a lot of that going on. I think if we lived in another country, maybe. But in this country, there are a lot of people like me that are standing up and speaking out.
Yeah.
We need that.
And they, you know, they're not going to take out all of us, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see.
You
ain't
make that joint like that.
I'm obscure. You know, I'm a small animal. I'm a smaller animal than you guys.
I appreciate that you wrote a book.
I mean, my podcast's only gotten maybe 8,000 downloads total, and I've done 50 episodes.
That's not bad.
I mean, that's a good start.
It doesn't sound very good to me.
No, that's not bad. That's decent.
He's used to bigger numbers, so.
I think I just got a pat on the head from your associate there, Ricardo.
All right, so tell us more about why you're so passionate about this, because every time I speak to you, you're so passionate about it. You just go off on the subject. So tell us why.
Okay.
And remember the codes, please.
The codes.
So I got started. I was just, you know, shuffling my way through life, and I was doing these boob jobs and liposuction in the what do you call it, the fat transplants,
BBLs.
facelifts. And I was nearing the end of my career, and for the last 10 years before I retired, I prescribed hormones, right? And I got interested in this, and here's the book I wrote about that. It's called Hormone Secrets, right? And see this mask on the front of this book. This is a 4-foot mask that I found in a Mexican restaurant in Houston. And here's a picture of me standing by that mask. Isn't that crazy? It's a 4-foot huge mask. And so what I did for the cover of my book is I had an artist put the names of the hormones on that mask.
What does it represent?
That mask is what, I'm going to be politically correct here. That mask is what either a woman's or man's brain is all about. It's all about hormones. Now, there's some in this audience here, like you guys, might think that this primarily represents women. But I can guarantee you, your hormones are important to you, too. You know, your testosterone preserves your lifespan and so on and so forth. And so I got into this thing, and I realized that the FDA had put these special warnings on hormones, the black box warnings. And while there are some things to be careful with when you prescribe hormones, they're the best drugs we've ever had in medical care. We've had thyroid for 120 years. We've had experience with estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone for 50, 60, 70 years, and we've had experience with growth hormone for 50 years, 50. So these things are very helpful. They cause few problems, and we have these black box warnings claiming that they cause cancer and blood clots and all kinds of other things, which were just a pack of lies. And so that's how I originally got into the healthcare corruption thing. I started looking at various areas in healthcare, and I realized that the whole thing was all about money, and it wasn't about making people better for the most part. I mean, that's not entirely true. But what I discovered And this is common percent right off the top of the entire $4 trillion healthcare bill. The hospitals, which are at least a third, maybe more of U.S. healthcare, and they're just absolutely ruthless. And I learned about Big Pharma, which is the most criminal industry in history. They've lost $86 billion in judgments and settlements to civil plaintiffs and U.S. federal prosecutors since 2000, and they have thousands of criminal records.
How much you said?
I mean,
how much? Billions?
$86 billion in judgments and settlements.
They lost.
But imagine what their gains are. If those are their loss.
Yeah, no, their gains are phenomenal, and these are pocket change for these guys.
Yeah,
it's a $1.3 trillion industry right now worldwide. It's and probably
I always knew the medical field.
To sell drugs, right? Basically,
they sell drugs, and
so they drug dealers.
They've had, 3 of them have had more than $2 billion in single payoffs. And these include Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and GlaxoSmithKline. Pfizer had a...
Wait. You can't say the names. You got to use PP and LL and JJ, stuff like that.
Okay. That's for future reference.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
No, this is no allegedly.
I know, but we got to say allegedly.
Yeah.
Because we don't know.
Well, I would say allegedly if it wasn't well documented. This is historical.
I know, but you know...
The Facebook.
The overlords.
But,
we're basically trapping on someone else's block, so we gotta follow their rules and regulations.
Are you saying that they're changing these the drugs is to change hormones?
Well, I'm saying that the hormones are run down because they want to sell patent drugs that are much more expensive.
Okay.
See, hormones can't be patented. That's the main thing.
Okay.
Why not?
It's the law. It's part of your. They can be patented if they're not natural. If natural means they're part of your natural biochemistry in your body.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so they run these things down, and I mean it's ridiculous. I mean these are some of the best drugs we've ever had. I mean listen to this story. You're not going to believe this, Ricardo.
Mm-hmm.
If we put all the women over 50 on estrogen, it would prevent 85% of the Alzheimer's. Just think about that. Now that you're not going to believe without looking at the references. So what I did in Hormone Secrets, I put an appendix in there with 75 references about what I just said. Okay? Now it may not be strictly true, but it's close to true. And we don't use estrogen as much as we should. It's outrageous. And, you know, Alzheimer's may be the most expensive disease in America if you count costs of long-term care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Everybody has an auntie or someone who has Alzheimer's.
Yeah, my grandparents had them. So, what's stopping people from taking these hormones? What's stopping them?
Well, now, the way the doctors work is since the Affordable Care Act, everyone's kind of gotten into being a corporate doctor. There are few independent doctors anymore. And we now have these standards of care that are developed by the drug companies, essentially, through doctors that are paid off. Now, I know that sounds like a big stretch, too, but that's the way it works. They all have these, quote, conflicts of interest. In other words, they're on the freaking gravy train from the drug companies. Now, psychiatry is a perfect example of this. We've got this thing called the DSM. It's like a yellow kind of a Bible of
I'm familiar.
Things are. You've heard of that.
Yeah, I'm actually a psychotherapist.
You're a psychotherapist. You know all about it. So that thing is developed by doctors on the pay of Big Pharma.
Yeah.
Almost entirely. And it's jokingly called the billing Bible because it defines, you know, whatever crazy nonsense they put together for a diagnosis.
Basically, you have to diagnose a client in order to get paid by insurance.
Yes, exactly. And the diagnoses are absolutely constructs.
It could change at any time.
You probably are aware of this, Ricardo.
Yeah.
They almost have no placebo control. They almost have no sugar pill controlled trials for any of those, you know, Prozac, Ritalin, atypical antipsychotic like Zyprexa. There are almost no placebo controlled trials for those drugs. And so what we have is we have a group of people who are operating autonomously, and that's the psychiatrists, based on their word about what's going on, with no science behind it. and they're prescribing some of the worst drugs we've ever had. They're tremendously addictive. They don't have opioid-style withdrawal symptoms. You know, you don't get the sweats and the shits and all that stuff, but you get tremendous anxiety and depression if you try to withdraw from these drugs. It takes months to years to get off of them. And if you've been on one of these Prozac-style drugs, SSRI-style drugs, for years, it's almost impossible to get off of them. I mean, it's just, you might as well just forget about it and take the damn things.
I have a question about a drug that's, blooming in our area. Marijuana. I feel like whenever something starts becoming legal, it must be good for the healthcare society, What is the thoughts on marijuana and hormones and so on, or depression?
Well, I'm no expert on marijuana, but it's my belief that the studies on marijuana are done by people with a great interest in marijuana. So I think that it's not as credible as everybody gives it credit for. And I think that if you have limited means and abilities, you're smarter to stay away from something that might take a little bit more out of you. You know what I mean? So I'm not a real big fan of marijuana. But you can find all kinds of studies and everything else that say it's miraculous, and particularly for chronic pain. And it probably works pretty well for chronic pain. But I think all these drugs take something from you. You know what I mean? In other words, they cut off a corner of your personality, and marijuana must do that to some extent. It's mild compared to a lot of other things. I mean, certainly we don't have the fatalities from marijuana that we have from alcohol. So that's my 10-cent opinion on marijuana. I'm sorry, It's not worth much more than that.
No, I appreciate it. You have years of experience, so I would take your advice.
What made you retire from being a doctor? Because I see now you put retired everywhere, even on the books.
Right. So I was 65, so that's the average age of retirement of physicians. But
you don't look 65.
What's that?
You don't look
68 actually. I'm
wow.
68.
You look good for your
I
age.
got some hair dye in there, guys.
Oh.
And there's also some hair transplants.
What?
See that? Those are transplanted.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have any hair in the front.
Oh,
okay.
And I'm on hormone replacement, which also helps.
Oh, hormone replacements? Oh, so you take the hormones for yourself. It keeps you younger?
It definitely helps. And I'm convinced it helps you live longer. And it helps you maintain your muscle mass and all the important things about being a man or a woman. And I tell you, it's helped me a lot, but the experiences I've had with women, they've been near miraculous. I mean, I could read a couple of my testimonials from Hormone Secrets. If you want to focus on that, I mean, it really is amazing. I had a cosmetic surgery practice, so I gave them a chance. By the time I quit, all my patients were over 50, and so these women were just being tortured by the change of life, and so I gave them a chance to try hormone therapy. Because what I would do is I said, look, you're paying me for this surgery. I'm going to put a pellet into your belly button area. And if you want, and you understand what you're getting, and you want to do it, I can get rid of your lack of hormone symptoms for a few months. And so I offered them that, and the ones that were interested and understood, I tried that, and they really did well. I mean, it was amazing.
No complaints?
Here's a quote. I could live without my husband, children, or cats, but I could never live without my beloved estrogen. That's from the LA Times.
Oh, wow.
And
I mean,
this
technically,
is the one that I like about testosterone. This guy's name is Steven. He's an 82-year-old retired CEO of a major media company. He said, I had lost all strength, and I was sitting in a wheelchair in a Palm Springs nursing home. The staff had to lift me in and out of bed. I was inches from being snuffed out. Then my doctor started coming in every week and giving me testosterone shots. In 6 weeks, I stood up and walked out of there, back into my life. So, I mean, it can be a remarkable thing.
So how do you take the
I've
testosterone?
got dozens of those in my book, Hormone Secrets.
How do you take the testosterone?
Is that also through the stomach?
Well, you can take it with cream, but you have to do it twice a day.
Cream? What you mean with cream? What, you eat it?
What's that?
Rub it on your skin, or you mean?
Rub it on your skin.
Oh.
Or you can take it with injections. Now, the injections cause the levels to go kind of up and down, but you know you're getting the drug. So I think the injections are usually preferable if you can stand a needle. If you're scared of it and you want to start out with a cream, you can do that. I mean, you guys are too young to worry about this.
So what about the pills?
Okay.
Aren't there pills?
There's no pills. No pills for testosterone.
So what about those commercials that says testosterone pills? Like now it's popularized on the commercials.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but there's no effective oral testosterone. I mean, for women who are elderly and who need very little testosterone, there is a pill for them, right? But for the kind of doses that a man needs, which is 10 or 40 times what a woman needs, it just isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you need to take them?
You need to inject yourself. It might be best twice a week. Use a half dose. Most people do it once a week.
Man, that's like shooting heroin.
And it's not a big deal. You can get. How old are you guys?
I'm 33.
I'm 25.
Okay, forget this.
30.
Yeah, you're young, studly guys. You don't have to worry about any of that. The trouble with you is it will destroy your fertility, right? With somebody that's 68 like me, that doesn't matter.
Mm.
So there are exceptions to what I say, but you need somebody experienced to evaluate you. I forgot to do my disclaimer at the beginning of this thing. Let me just give you a 10 seconds disclaimer.
Mm.
This is not medical care. I'm not your doctor. I'm no longer practicing, and if you have a problem, you have to go see someone with a license.
Yes,
so there you have it.
But you can still perform surgery, right?
No, I
retired.
quit.
No, not legally. But if you had to, you would.
To save a life.
If somebody put a gun to my head, it would be easy for me to do it. But I'm not going to practice medicine anymore.
Yes, I understand. You said testosterone and hormones are. Well, I'm big on the prostate cancer thing. Any natural foods that would just be good for you in terms of boosting testosterone?
Okay. So the best thing to improve your hormonal health is good nutrition and the right kind of exercise. And what I'm talking about with the right kind of exercise is weight training. Relatively difficult weight training, but you can do it in 45 minutes twice a week. It has to be a little intense, and that does good things for your. And you guys at 35, I mean, your bodies respond rapidly to that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the diets go, you may be aware, and this is in Hormone Secrets. I've got a couple of chapters about diets. Right there's our mask, our Mexican mask with all the hormones on it again.
Any reason why you put testosterone at the top and estrogen, or is just random or?
Well, it's a very important, and testosterone gets broken down to estrogen in a woman's body. So actually, when I had the permission of my patients, and they were over 50 and they had menopausal symptoms, and they wanted to try hormone therapy with a pellet that would last 3 months, I used just testosterone, and that got broken down to estrogen, and that relieved many of their symptoms. I mean, they really, really felt better. And if your listeners are interested in referrals, they can go to my book, and there's several organizations which have hormone doctors. They can do this for you.
For free?
What's that?
For free?
Oh no.
No.
Come on.
It's generally the insurance.
He's a businessman.
Because this kind of medicine has been cast out by standard medical practitioners, and the FDA and the drug companies have conspired to put these black box warnings on these medications, which it's a real travesty. Black box warning means you could get cancer, you could get blood clots, it could get heart disease, and those are the three. It's just crazy. They improve a lot of that, but like I say, there are subtleties here, and you have to study it, and ideally you find someone who's good at this and knows the field. My group was called worldlinkmedical.com, and you can find doctors to go to from that group. There's another group called A4M, American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, and they were less. As a group, they were more mixed. They weren't trained all the same way like we were.
So what's your thoughts on on the fungus amongst us, the mushrooms that bloomed
Okay.
and that caused so much
this
chaos.
is for the last year I've been focused almost exclusively on this. And I mean, it's a disaster. And the fungus itself has been overestimated, and the problems have been greatly exaggerated by various means. And there has been a huge conspiracy to suppress therapies, the therapies would decrease fatalities by 85%. That's the general consensus. And that's been the experience of the people that have used these therapies. And then there's the issue of the Jabberwocky, which is a supposed fungus cure, right? And that has been an outrage. It's the worst story I've heard in my medical lifetime.
Big mushrooms.
That's a big
What's that?
statement.
No, I said big mushrooms.
Yeah. So,
A lot of people fell for it in that round.
anyway, so we have now demonstrated increase in population-wide deaths of 40%. These are insurance company figures, and they come out of large databases in Germany and other places. So the people are dying, and this started in 2021, not in 2020. In 2020, the fungus started, right? And so for a year, we had the fungus and no theoretical treatment for it, and then they rolled out this thing, and the deaths increased. In 2020, the number of deaths had barely increased, if at all. In other words, population-wide mortality had barely increased. So it seems obvious to the sophisticated observers that the Jabberwocky, not the fungus, was the problem. And so, I mean, there are just substantial harms. We have this database called the VAERS database, and that has 26,000 deaths right now due to the Jabberwocky. I mean, it's just crazy. Any other treatment of that kind would have been thrown in the wastebasket after 50 deaths. But we've got 26,000 documented ones. And this thing is an imperfect database. It's a voluntary reporting system. And basically, I mean, it probably is underreported by 10 times.
So
There's
look,
probably 260,000 deaths.
Doc, do you think more people succumb to the Jabberwocky or to the fungus?
You know, in my mind, I think there's no doubt that the Jabberwocky killed more people than the fungus, but this is very hard to prove. The fungus itself has been poorly characterized, poorly studied, and exaggerated over and over. And the funniest thing about this whole thing, I mean, it's funny in a black humor sort of way, is we have people who are like Winnie the Pooh. Did you guys read Winnie the Pooh when you were little kids?
Yeah, I have
Winnie
a kid.
Winnie the Pooh went around the circle 3 times before he figured out what was going on, right? And the little kids would understand what Winnie the Pooh should have realized before. While they're watching this thing, by the second time around, the little kid's listening to the story and he says, Winnie the Pooh, you should know this. Well, we have these guys, including very influential doctors, Dr. John Campbell, who are finally red pilling on the whole thing. And they're outraged. And what it took to get them going was a document release by a company that's the company is, they're mobsters, and there are a lot of people that have called them mobsters. Let me quote one of these for you.
Oh no, he got the quotes.
Peter Ross, who was a former marketing vice president for this company, he said it's scary how many similarities there are between this industry and the mob. Obscene amounts of money, killings and deaths, bribing politicians and others. The difference is all of these people in the drug industry look upon themselves as law-abiding citizens. However, when you get them together as a group, it's almost like when you have war atrocities. People do things they don't think they're capable of because the group can validate what you're doing is okay. And there's another guy.
Problem, reaction, solution.
What's that?
Problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah. Another guy named Harry Loyne, who was a Park Davis CEO, he said, if we put horse manure in a capsule, we could sell to 95% of these doctors. So that's their attitude towards us.
But that's true, though. People believe whatever they're sold to believe.
The doctors are sheep, and I got to.
But the people are what then? If the doctors are sheep, then what are the people?
We all sheep.
We're all sheep. The doctors are the most elite intellectually, they're the most elite of any large group in America. There's 1 million MDs in America, and they've got an average IQ of 130, which is very high. We're very freaking smart, but they are conditioned with years of following the leader to believe the things that they're told, and they're chickens. They put their careers together with many decades of work, and they don't want to risk anything, and they're afraid to tell the truth, even when they know the truth.
But that's almost every person in a high executive position.
Nurse.
You know a lot of things that you are not allowed to tell people, especially those at the bottom. You and I both know this.
Yeah.
It's the code. And you was part of that at one time too.
For sure.
Well, I was ignorant.
Before you got to add retired at the end.
That's how you put it.
Well, you're right about one thing. I'm not a courageous guy because I don't have so much to lose right now. I don't have a career to lose. They can't take my license away. You know, I mean, it's just, I can tell the truth.
That's why it's different when you're in the field, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
You're not in the house anymore.
So you guys know that the FDA is the regulatory agency for pharma and for food, and they basically work together with the companies to fake the drug patent studies. They use all these statistical tricks. They buy off their research subcontractors, and my idea is that a lot of them have some guy with a baseball cap sitting in a basement in Pakistan who's a research subcontractor. See, now I'm exaggerating to make a point, but anybody outside of this country, I mean, it's very hard to tell what they're up to. And if they say a drug doesn't work, they're never going to get another contract, right?
Yeah.
So who owns these companies?
This is a great question. This is you put the needle in right the strangest thing about the whole thing. Okay, so two large equity companies own 25 trillion of the corporate real estate, and one of them's called Vanguard and the other is called BlackRock.
Okay, I know both of them.
Pfizer and Moderna, who are fungus treatment companies, we'll put it like that. These two are over half owned by BlackRock, and the leader of BlackRock is an absolutely insanely woke character. I think his name is Larry Fink. His last name is Fink, but I may have his first name wrong. And you can get online and you can listen to what he says, and he is just absolutely crazy. And he's promoting all kinds of stuff that's bad for small people like us. So the trouble is that these companies, BlackRock and Vanguard, they own each other. So they're essentially a monolith, the two of them. They are, it's a $25 trillion asset company. It's crazy.
Yeah, they own almost everything. A lot of stocks too in every company. They're the main.
Yeah, that's right. They have majority holdings in just about every company you can imagine. And
exactly.
I don't know whether they own
even Twitter,
Google and Apple majority holdings.
Yeah, they do.
They certainly have huge stakes in them.
You can't buy stocks really without going through Vanguard.
No.
That's how much stocks they own.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
Black.
Well, there are other things
like
Fidelity and so on that are not part of Vanguard. But I believe Vanguard is bigger than BlackRock. But they're the same company.
They definitely are.
And BlackRock almost owns more than 20% of the real estate in America right now. They're buying.
I hope that's not true. I haven't heard that. I hope you're wrong about that.
Well, look it up. Look up BlackRock buying up real estate in America. Especially farming real estate. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the global elites are part of this group of people. And
yeah, I'm not surprised at all, honestly.
That Breckershaw, Hashaw, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Gates.
You ever seen the movie The
You guys know about the Rothschilds?
Yeah, I definitely know about the Rothschilds.
Yeah. Well, the Rothschilds
I know the history.
are more than 50% stakeholders in the Fed, as I understand it. The Fed is a private bank that, that issues our currency, and these guys operate autonomously in the interests of the country. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah, the interest rate goes up and down when they feel like it.
What's that?
The interest rate goes up and down when they feel like it. You heard about the $600 million debt that Detroit purposely put in certain neighborhoods so that black and brown families could lose their homes, and that's why Detroit looks like that now. It was purposely done, social engineering, and it's now coming out.
Well, I don't think you guys are paranoid because there's a hell of a lot of bad stuff going on. I almost believe anything these days.
A lot of these things.
Anyway, I was going to bring up this idea of the global predators. A friend of mine wrote this book.
Everybody's writing books, huh?
Yeah.
Global predators.
The books live on.
Peter Bregan.
Reading is
And
fundamental.
he's one of the good podcast sources. After you listen to your guys' Ricard's podcast, I recommend you go over and listen to Peter Bregan and RFK Jr. Anyway, this guy dissected the thing early, and he figured out what was going on probably a year and a half ago and published this book. I mean, I was just stunned when I read it. And it seems like a big thing to read, but you can read just the summary timeline at the end. And
Doc, let me ask you a question, right? Because last night I was speaking to a nurse, right? And the nurse explained to me that there's almost like a stigma now that a lot of traveling nurses in particular are addicted to prescription drugs, and that they've been stealing drugs from hospitals, and that's why they don't let them into the room to count medication or separate medication. Is that so? Oof. Is there like trafficking going on in hospitals with prescription drugs?
Well, I can't specifically address that regard, and I know there are nurses who get addicted to prescription drugs.
Now it's PG.
What's that?
No, I'm saying now it's PG.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you guys are aware of the opioid problem that developed after a single corporation, which was privately held, named Purdue. In other words, one family owned it. They claimed that this...
Purdue, the life insurance company?
They claimed that OxyContin was not addictive, and they publicized this idea. They sold it to medical boards. They paid for the publication of that nonsense into the medical literature, and the doctors were fooled. And what happened was the wholesalers, including McKesson and the other two big wholesalers, they jumped on. And so Purdue only ended up selling about 15% of the opioids. But the opioids became promiscuously prescribed, and when you expose an entire population to opioids, like Demerol or heroin or any of those things, or like Mexican black tar heroin, or like OxyContin, what happens is that 5% of us are slaves to that drug the rest of our lives. Yeah. So they were not used cautiously. Now, the good part of that story is after they killed 100,000 people a year in overdoses for, probably 5 to 7 years, Purdue was bankrupted 2 years ago, roughly, by plaintiffs' lawyers. And they're one of only 2 drug companies that have been put out of business by lawyers. The federal prosecutors have never managed to do it. They're basically, according to a book I read, called the Chicken Shit Club, they basically they pay off, they allow payoffs instead of bankruptcies. But they tore apart Purdue Pharma and another smaller opioid company called Insys. They're the only pharma companies that have been put out of business during this whole mess. And this happened prior to the pandemic.
Right before the pandemic.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And so what happened was we addicted a whole nation of people to opioids. We were giving them out indiscriminately, and before that we were only giving out the opioids to people with cancer pain, terminal patients who were dying, acute problems right after surgery. That was all that they were used for. But then we started using them chronically, and they'd give out a bottle of several hundred of these things, and you could smoke the damn stuff. I mean, it was, you could snort it or smoke it or take it as a pill. And the Mexicans, black tar heroin came in, and some of those people, as the prices shot up, as the awareness became more obvious in the medical community that they made a huge mistake, the Mexican black tar heroin was sold sometimes in the parking lots outside of the pill mills. I mean, it's a horrible story.
Oh yeah,
I have a summary of it in Butchered by Healthcare. There are several good books written about it.
Opioids have the same chemical compounds as heroin, they said, so they switch in between.
So these opioids, they attack, or they are used by the body in the same way, and they are used by a little receptor in the body called the opioid receptor. I'm not much smarter about it than that regard, but they tickle that opioid receptor, and cause these characteristic high and nausea, vomiting, and withdrawal symptoms. And they're usually rapidly addicted. I don't think that most of us are vulnerable to these things. I think what happened was they passed it out to everybody, and they made this standard that anyone was a reasonable candidate for them, for a headache or anything else. And so 5% of us or 3% of us or whatever are vulnerable to opioids, and we all got addicted. And then you're sniffing around trying to find your next hit. You're doing illegal stuff. You sell all your assets and keep your habit going. I mean, that's how crazy it is.
Like tobacco.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a while for them to take down big tobacco. It took a while for big tobacco to acknowledge the fact that they were killing people and nicotine was addictive.
Well, the thing about this is we still have probably 100,000 overdoses a year in America. So we caught the disease, and there's no easy way out of it. I mean, these people are screwed. I mean, they think about nothing but the next hit.
Keep it real.
And we just somehow are chemically vulnerable to it.
But now they got Narcan, the thing that they spray up your nose.
Okay.
If you have
So this is another crazy story. They made up these Narcan-based compounds or similar compounds to Narcan, and they sell the syringes to addicts, and they sell them to treatment centers, and they sell them to high schools and everyone else for $4,000 a syringe. I mean, it's just crazy. They patented the ability to sell the stuff it's just nuts. And this stuff, of course, it costs around 15 cents if you buy it in a little glass bottle.
15 cents to 4,000?
Wow.
Yeah. And so I mean, there's a lot of nasty stories around the opioids and all that. I mean, it's crazy. And then they have the withdrawal treatment programs that have turned into a big boondoggle for pharmaceutical companies too. We have this stuff called Suboxone. You guys have heard of methadone.
Methadone and Suboxone. Yeah, it basically supposed to wean you off of the heroin by giving you small doses.
Methadone is obviously it's oral, and you go off methadone, and it takes a week, 10 days to get off. To get off heroin, it takes 3 days. Right? You get the sweats. You lock them in the room. They're going to come out in 3 days, and they're going to be a little pale, but they're going to be fine.
Oh wow.
Methadone is at least a week. Might be a month. Suboxone is much longer. And so they actually manufactured a drug that was more addictive in order to treat an addiction. I mean, the sensible thing would be to get rid of these people who have the chutzpah to give us a drug that's worse than the original drug. In theory, it doesn't cause a high, so maybe it's not as abusable. But Suboxone is a nasty, nasty idea, and it's very freaking expensive. Paid for by insurance, of course. See, it all is a web of deceit.
Always goes back.
Yeah. I actually work at a mental health shelter for the mentally ill, chemically addicted. I'm the clinical director there, ironically. And we had a client recently that that went and got methadone, and then he took heroin right after, which caused him to have a seizure. Which then he overdosed while having a seizure. It's crazy. I'm like, wow. But it's basically like he wanted that stronger high.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Suboxone can be abused, but it's not apparently a very pleasant high.
Yeah. And Suboxone, I know sometimes when the clients suffer from schizophrenia and they don't want to take their regular medication, they'll come in there, shoot them with it. And it makes them like dull for like a long period of time, and sometimes they'll put on heavy weight, or sometimes like their mouth will drool, or their mouth will be real dry, and it makes them almost look like a vegetable. And they'll say like they don't like the way it makes them feel, but it takes them a very long time to like actually go back to functioning.
Is everything?
Ricard, you deal with these psychiatric drugs all the time. Maybe I should just go over how evil they all are. And how crazy psychiatry is. I mean, and I'm not making a joke here. They are literally off their rockers. They got these drugs that don't work and are tremendously toxic. And they haven't developed studies that show they work. And we've got 4 categories of these drugs, right? We got the SSRIs like Prozac, and those things cause violence, and, akathisia, the incredible restlessness some people have, and some observers think that they're responsible for a lot of the school shootings and the mass murders is people who are having akathisia from the Prozac class drugs. There are entire huge groups of people that think that psychiatry should not be in business at all. And I'm not just talking about the Scientologists. And they somehow figured it out early. And I think they're right. I think that the psychiatrists are basically doing harm. And if we didn't have these medicines, we'd be in better shape. And you probably are aware, Ricard, that these entities, these psychiatric problems, before we had these drugs, they waxed and waned. They got better and they got worse. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you're crazy, you're not crazy all the time. But since we have the drugs, it turned all these things chronic. And the onset of the heavy medication use, it coincided precisely with the onset of everybody getting on these welfare programs and disability. And a lot of people think that was causal. In other words, the drugs caused the problem because it turns all these things chronic. So to go on, we've got amphetamine-style drugs like Ritalin, and we got a third of the Ivy League kids have prescriptions for them. They use it to study for tests and all this stuff, and their friends can all get it. And we have rat models where it shrinks their brains. I mean, it's not a good thing.
Wait, I never got that though. The whole thing with Ritalin. Why do people take Ritalin to study for a test? I don't get it.
Well, interestingly, it seems it has this strange effect where it speeds you up if you're slow, and it slows you down if you're speeded up. And so that's the theory. And once they got through all the kids and they diagnosed some huge number, 10% of the kids in the country with ADHD or whatever it is, 17 or 18% of us are on psych drugs, right? Mm. And so in some areas of Louisiana, there's 40% of the little kids in school, the boys, who are, they're active kids who want to go chasing around alligators or something. They put them on these drugs because the teachers want them docile. So we
You sound like Dr. Umar Johnson.
They were used in World War II for the kamikaze pilots to drive their they make people crazy enough to do that, drive their plane into an American ship. And then we have the atypical antipsychotics like Zyprexa was the first one, I believe. Those things shorten lifespan by 10 to 20 years. And it's well known.
Wow.
It gives you diabetes and heart disease. And what's the other class of drugs?
But they say all the side effects in the commercial. They just say it very fast.
Yeah. They usually have the side effects at the bottom, cause headache, cause nausea, cause
diarrhea,
yeah.
dry mouth.
Yeah.
You might gain weight, you might lose weight, you might get a heart attack up until death. They say it on
There's only 2 countries in the world that allow direct-to-consumer advertising. That's the United States. Everybody thinks it's bad news. The United States and New Zealand. All the rest of them ban it. It's against the law. So, you're trying to train people to go into the doctor and say, I need some Zyprexa. I have a... Have you ever heard of the chemical alteration of the brain that Prozac fixes? Have you ever heard that story?
Mm-mm.
No, tell us real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people have heard this one. They claim that the marketing line was that Prozac fixes a chemical imbalance in the brain, right? Or the other drugs, the SSRIs, or the atypical antipsychotics, or whatever. But anyway, that was invented in a marketing department of a drug company. It was not based on any fact. And it's thought by the scientists to be a ridiculous idea.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Wow. All right. So to close out, what would you want to leave the people with? Because we're getting to the time for us to close out.
Well, the most important thing today is I think that you should question what you're being told. I don't think you should believe a word of the mainstream media. There's a Substack thing, which is a blog platform that I'm on that is uncensored. It's Substack.com, and my blog is Robert Yoho Substack, robertyoho.substack.com. And
text me the links. I'll put the links in the description.
Okay, thanks. But you have to start somewhere, and you can read my books. They're inexpensive, and that'll help you figure out the medical world. And my Substack will help you figure out the fungus. And then there are references everywhere in that material that you can look further, but you definitely don't want to believe the medical literature. I mean, we have a recent study on one of the supposed treatment for the fungus. They claimed it didn't work, and they used doses that were tiny. That was 2 months ago in the New England Journal of Medicine. I call that formerly the best medical journal in the world. But now it's just a freaking painted whore like the rest of the journals, and they're basically shilling for the companies. So I would say question authority, and if the best people in this world have a strong nose for BS, and I can tell you guys do, and you don't believe what you're told. No. You just gotta look and question and be sure of what you're seeing before you swallow anything. And even on the right side of the argument, there are people that have gone way too far, and they think they're practically watching flying saucers coming out of the air and attacking it. You know the story. Yeah. But you've got to carefully filter and find those sources that you like. My books are good, and then the Substack is another great place to look. And podcasts are good too, because you have an idea of the intelligence and the truthfulness of the people who are talking. You just have an interpersonal layer that you can employ. Your ability to judge people to be brought in, and you can't tell as much out of a medical journal article. So you're not talking to somebody face to face.
So Dr. Yoho, show them your books one more time, and tell them where they can find your books at.
Okay, so these easiest. I'm no great lover of Amazon.
I like your black book cover.
You can find on Amazon for $3 from Kindle. You can buy a hardcover for $15 or something like that. They're not horribly expensive. Hormone Secrets and Butchered by Healthcare. Mm-hmm. I appreciate you letting me advertise, guys. It's not like I make a lot of money. I'm a break-even.
We appreciate you putting the truth out there, man.
Yeah, and we also a 501c3 nonprofit charity, so you can donate to The Real Word, $therealwordinc. So check us out. I'm gonna send you the links.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Closing thoughts, gentlemen?
My closing thought is, actually my closing thought is I really did have an experience in the medical field. But I'm going to just keep it short. The experience I had, I had this doctor, and they tried to give me pills, right? And I had my parents with me, too. I had my mother. It was my mother, and my mother was like, oh, take the pill, take the pill. I looked at my mother then in the eye, and during that age, I already stepped up to my father, so I was like, yeah, you're not making me eat this. I'm not taking this pill just because you told me to. And I knew the culture. I never took it, but I think I knew it was like I knew a lot of things before my time, but it's just that I ain't know what I knew before my time. But yeah, it's a good thing I ain't take none of them pills. I was to take none of them because I looked at my mother and that doctor in the eye, and I looked at the doctor like, yo, you Haitian, you try to give me this, like, what's wrong with you?
Like the Haitian doctor that diagnosed me with COVID.
Yeah, for real. That's how I looked at that doctor. I'm like, yo, look, you Haitian, and you out here playing my mom. But it's like, yeah, okay, look, sometimes,
But they signed the oath.
It's a business.
Yeah, it's a business, but at the end of the day, like, I was young, and I wasn't, I always say I was knowledgeable, but it was like, at the time, I was a hothead, so I wasn't really looking at it that way, but at the same time, I'm like, why am I about to take this because you tell me to take it? Like hell no. Yeah. And, I'm like, I still looked at pill like a drug too, even back when I was younger. I always looked at it like a drug. I'm like, why am I about to take this? I don't know what this is. I don't know the side effects, none of that. Like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, facts. Come on, closing thought?
My closing thought is definitely, happy Easter weekend to everybody. And from my perspective, faith is important. We have a lot of doctors, doing their jobs, and we can't blame them. Everybody has to hustle somehow. We got to put food on the table. But mental health comes from, also faith. If you got a strong faith, I find you'll have a much more peaceful day. And God gave us everything we needed. We got all the herbs on the planet already. We don't need secondary drugs. That's kind of like the high. But what I know, one thing about highs is, you know, it just makes a bigger fall. So try to take care of yourself, stay level-headed, have faith.
But the one thing is though, we all gotta go up and down, but you know, the true stand-ups, you know, you go always bounce back, man. It ain't no big deal. Oh yeah, one last thing, you know, read, man. Like if you don't read, you ain't gonna go nowhere in life, bro. Like that's honesty.
One last question for the doctor. What about when it comes to schools? Because it's the schools that's telling you majority of the time to inject your kids with the poison. So how do you get around that?
That's a good question.
Yeah, how do you get around that? That's a very good question.
You know, you just can't take the risk. You've got to homeschool them or you got to leave the state. I'm sorry. That's my opinion. I mean, it's, and again,
let's keep it real.
I'm not surprised by your answer because
it's too risky. I mean, it's
too many contracts behind, you know, closed doors of where you can't escape it. You go to another town, you might see the same thing. So homeschooling is probably the best practice.
That's real.
But who got the time and money to do that?
That's why you gotta.
Well, there are online resources that make it a lot cheaper, a lot easier now, and an awful lot. You know, 10-20% more are homeschooling than there were a year ago. That's a huge increase.
To be honest, I don't think it's really that hard to homeschool. I personally don't think. I think it's gonna be better now to homeschool because it's like.
But you gotta be able to have the time to do it with your kid.
That's the only thing. If you could have somebody to do the time to do that, I think. You do got the resource to really homeschool kids. It's just somebody have to have the time.
That's gotta work from home.
That's the only difference. But I personally think it's not hard to do it because, like, come on, like, we got technology all around us, and with technology, you could literally learn a lot of things for free with no cost. So with that source, you literally could pass that information down to your kids. But like we all said, you gotta have the time to do it.
I gotta appreciate you keeping it real. He's like just homeschooling, man. Don't take the chance.
I mean, I'm not surprised. Man.
That was a thought. Homeschool might be a real thing. Then
any school you go to there's some type of
wackiness
that you have to deal with. You can't escape it.
They gotta follow the rules.
So that's why they make you sign deals and all these other stuff. To be like.
So special shout out to Dr. Robert Yoho, all the way from California, that came and joined us today.
Yes.
Doctor, did you have fun with us today? It was interesting, right? It was different.
Oh, I thought it was great. Tell me when it's a cut, and then I've got a couple of ideas for you.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So we thank you for joining us today. We thank all of you for joining us. Shout out to everybody that's been watching. Shout out to everybody that's been supporting. Shout out to everybody that follow us on Instagram. That's at The Real Word Ministries Inc. on Instagram. That's at The Real Word Ministries Inc. on Instagram. Shout out to everybody that follow us on Facebook. That's www.facebook.com/TheRealWord7. That's The Real Word 7, like Mike Vick. Shout out to everybody that subscribe to us on YouTube. That's www.youtube.com/TheRealWordTV. The Real Word TV, one word, on YouTube. Also check us out on podcasts on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Soundcloud, and Pandora. We're also on the Brick Network every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 noon, 1 a.m., and 4 p.m. So we thank you for joining us. We thank you for all the love and support. We close out with a prayer. Doctor, do you pray or no?
I do.
Okay, so pray for us to close. We usually close out with a prayer. We're waiting for you to pray, Doctor.
I'll let you guys do it.
No, the guest always prays. That's how we do it. That's the tradition.
Well, I want to thank everyone for the friendship and the fellowship that we've displayed today, and I hope we can go through and be brave and do what we have to do in the future to keep our country and the world free from these horrible problems. Thank you.
Amen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor. Shout out to you. Stay in touch, Doctor. Don't be a stranger now that you got friends in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. My son lives in Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
Maybe I'll send him over. He's a character.
Wow.
So, and he just went back last night. He was here. Now, we're cut, right?
Hold on one second.
It's the real word. It's the real